This segment brought to you by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Find out more at kansasgrainsorghum.org.
Welcome to Farm Factor. First today, Duane Toews and Nathan Kauffman discuss where the ag economy is going, both short and long term.
Duane Toews joining you with AGam in Kansas, and a chance to catch up with Nathan Kauffman with the Federal Reserve out of Kansas City, one of the economists that work for the Federal Reserve. And Nathan, you had a chance to speak to folks about some interesting issues, kind of looking down the road, if you will, and trying to determine just where this ag economy is going, both not only in the short but long term as well.
I think people look at the long term to try to understand where things are headed when they're making decisions for their own operation, and certainly there's a lot of optimism over the long term. The demographics that suggest that there's growing populations and growing incomes, recognizing that consumers maybe want a different kind of food today in some respects than where it had been, but at the same time recognizing that parts of the farm economy are dealing with this downturn over the last few years that is a transition. So I think that it's going to be important for producers to be focused very much so on the long term, but position the business during the short term so that they remain viable over the long term and deal with what's turned into a prolonged downturn in the farm economy.
And certainly short term, there are a number of issues out there in terms of profitability that a lot of folks are dealing with on a regional basis for you over 7 states there at the Federal Reserve in the heart of ag country.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen across the commodity space, it's been a time when supply growth has maybe outpaced demand growth here the last few years, and we're looking at an economy now where the amount of wheat or the amount of corn that's out there has really grown substantially over the last couple of years, and it's put pressure on prices. So we're seeing that across the ag commodity space, and it's reduced profit margins, and certainly farmers are having to adjust their operations accordingly.
You had some interesting perspectives as well about the Consumer Food Price Index.
Yeah, we've been tracking this. Obviously, the Fed pays a lot of attention to prices overall, and food prices being a component to something that we would monitor regularly. And in that respect, we are seeing some divergent trends, one that would show that food prices for food at home have been declining for an extended period of time, but at the same time, food prices for food away from home are actually rising. And so some of that just simply reflects the fact that there's still a certain set of consumers that very much looks for low food prices, and that's an attractive component. But there's also a growing population that also wants different food attributes and looking at quality attributes that are maybe different too. So I think that represents a shift in terms of what we're seeing for consumer food preferences, and one that producers, whether that's in rural America or in urban parts of the country, are going to need to understand for the future.
Our thanks to Nathan Kauffman with the Federal Reserve, an economist, joining us here on AGam in Kansas. Jamie, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Duane. Folks, come back after these messages for this week's Kansas Soybean Update.